Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Happening. My name is Jorge Shaft, and I've got quite a show planned for you today. We're going to be talking about social care. Honestly, it's the big thing here in Britain at the moment. Big reform there, very exciting. We're going to be talking about a lawsuit in the United States, Epic Games versus Apple, the Titans battle of ages, if you think of ages in terms of like lawsuits and like tech giants. Also going to be talking about rhinos. Yeah, rhinos. Turns out they're good. Upside down. But first, let's go and mention also the last subject, which is an anniversary. Not any one thing in particular, but it's the anniversary. Well, you probably know what anniversary I'm going to talk about. And if you don't know, make sure to keep watching The Happening here on Relaks Radio with Jorge Shaft to find out what it is. But first, let's go straight into it. Social care. All right. Anybody who's been sort of, walking around looking at newspapers here in the UK will not have failed to notice that, like, social care is the big deal. Everybody's kind of talking about it. It was the front page news of every single newspaper on Friday. On Friday too, but it was also on Wednesday when I first sort of noticed it. But what is it? An article I've got here of which.co.uk, which I'm not a huge fan of, but does have an article that just explains what's going on. And it says this. Its title is Social Care Reform. What's changing and how will it affect you? Okay. The government has announced an overhaul to the way people pay for adult social care in England. From October 2023, no one arranging support, such as home care or residential care, will have to pay more than £86,000 over their lifetime in care costs. Assets of less than £20,000 won't have to pay anything at all towards their care for their assets. And those with assets under £100,000 will be eligible for some state support, up to £23,550 Okay? Seems like what it is, isn't it? The Prime Minister announced the changes in Parliament on the 7th of September with the introduction of a new health and social wealth care levy that he said would help fund the new care system and address financial challenges in the NHS. Excuse me? What was that? From April 2022, national insurance contributions and the dividend taxes will increase by 1.25 percentage points. The Prime Minister told MPs the tax hike will raise almost £36 billion over the next 3 years. So let's think about that. What does that mean? It means that we've got, assistance if you don't have if you have like a certain amount of cash, and you get this free if you have less than 20,000, which is actually about as much as how it currently works. If you have more than £100,000 in assets, you don't get any kind of assistance, which, I mean, fair enough. 100k is quite a bit of cash. Or is it? Because here's where the first of the sort of problems comes up. And this was flagged. And by flagged, I mean everyone pointed it out, because, how should I put this? This was quite the storm, the social care. For a start, the assets. £100,000 might sound like a vast, giant amount of assets to a lot of you, including me. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, wow, wouldn't it be cool to have £100,000 in assets? I currently have like a mug. But when you look at like London house prices, you see that it's actually not like super pricey. Like, for example, just down the road from where I am, there's a 3-bedroom house that's coming up for sale at the moment. Old pub, great building, quite a fancy looking place, and is going for sale, the whole building, for £3 million. And it's a house. Like, yes, it's a house in central London in Camden. Nice. Not what's there not to like about that? But ultimately, like, it is one house in Camden going for sale for £3 million. Essentially, what it means is that anyone who owns any property in central London, anywhere in like London here, is probably not going to be eligible for the payments, because the flat I'm in at the moment, how much is that going to cost to sell? Probably, quite honestly, easily 100,000. No, if you were like selling it. And my flat's not a grand thing. Like, I'm not going to give you like the house tour because I like my privacy, but like I could get it done in under a minute. I've just got a comment that says a house for £3 million. Yes, it's in Camden. Like, it's central London. It's a good place. It's a pub building, but that's what it's being sold for, £3 million. And that's like, it's not the most outrageous one, I know. Up in Primrose Hill, there's granted a pretty big house, but with a canal view, good view. That's going for £5 million. Like, it sounds a huge amount on paper, going like, oh, £100,000 in assets, but it's really not. Especially when we remember this is going to be going to older people. And honestly, if you've not been reading the stories of some of the London house price stuff, then it's, how should I put this? It's going to just kind of come out of nowhere. For example, there's always the classic story of like, oh, look at this little old lady who bought a little house for a very affordable amount of money in 1970, and now her house is worth like £2 million. And she's still living like a church mouse because like she just worked a normal job for all of her life, and now it's just like a nice retired grandma, but in a house that's worth millions and millions of pounds because of the time that it's taken and the fact that London's house prices have just been shooting up. So ultimately what this is saying is like, yeah, if you're a retired person and you live in any big British city, the comment says, little old ladies are smart. Well, the thing about it is, like, you could say, yes, it's smart, but like in the 70s, the houses were really affordable. Like, you could work a normal job as like a plumber, even retail, and you could reasonably expect to buy a house. It's been a huge problem in this country, both for young people like me. I can't afford housing because, well, to buy houses anyway, because I don't make enough money. Can afford to rent, but like, what's rent really? It means, oh, I get to stay in here, and then if something goes wrong, I get kicked out. Oh wow, what amazing security. But then, you fast forward 50 years for the generation that managed to buy their houses, in like a good condition, with a good price, and suddenly like they're going to be completely unable to get any kind of social care support at all. And so this little bracket of like, oh, if you have £100,000 in assets, you don't get any social care, basically goes, anyone who lives in London is not going to have any social care. I mean, it sounds like super harsh. It sounds like some kind of cartoon villain thing, but no, it really is. Like, the cheapest houses in London, like, are way over in East London, like in Dagenham. Like, even those go for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds. And yeah, it's great if you already have that house and you're going to be living in London and there's a good sort of like a London privilege. But yeah, it's not going to be so great. The other thing that's also not so good about this is the fact that when you have, it's going like, oh, here's all these sort of, changes, and eligibilities, and we're going to kind of, put this all down. But then also on top of that, they're putting on a tax hike. So you might be thinking, your first instinct might be to go like, oh, all sort of like old people with like the big houses, yeah, they're going to have to pay for it more. Not really. All of us are going to pay for it more because as it said, there's this tax hike that's being added to it, 1.6%. That means that 1.25%, sorry. A national insurance contribution. That's everyone. I pay a national insurance contribution. So it's a double whammy on everyone. Old folks who actually do need social care, but who live in houses that were reasonable to buy back when they were buying houses, won't get any social care. But then all of us have to pay more money with this tax hike in national insurance contributions. So then we all still have to pay for it. 10 people in the whole country are going to be getting it. It's not exactly great. And you can see it across the poll. For the first time, there was national outrage. Where's Robin Hood when you need him, hey? He's been needed for a long time. A long, long time, mate. Somebody called the sheriff of Nottingham. I'm not very happy with him. Anyway, you can see it in the polls, though. Like, this week, for the first time in an eternity, the Labour Party actually beat the Tories in polling because all of the they call it the grey vote, because all the sort of old folks who, still vote, looked at this and was like, what? Nope. Keir Starmer's looking nice nowadays, isn't he? Yeah, it's one of those political binds about Britain at the moment. Like, you can't really do anything. You can't really touch sort of like pensions, or the pensioners all vote against you, and they're the ones who vote. So, kind of screws you over. Which is really sad, because you could make an argument like, yeah, no, maybe the pensions should be lower because, it's money going from like the poorest groups to the richest. The elderly are the richest people in Britain, in society generally. They're the one, not just because they bought houses when houses cost way, way, way less than they did now. And when the average sort of wage was way, way more than it is now. And their productivity match their wages a lot more. But you could also argue that, like, yeah, maybe young people should have like more investment. They should have like more sort of, boosts into their opportunities and so on. But no, we can't have it. And instead, when anything ever gets done, it's, oh yeah, here's a system that'll make everyone pay more to give to less people. Bit of a whiplash. It's like, wait, what? Hang on. It is, of course, in a big sort of social care crisis in general. It's not going to be any surprise. Going by the Which article again, the social care crisis is not a new problem. Successive governments have pledged to fix the system for decades. None have delivered on this promise. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, the social care challenge became impossible to ignore, and pressure mounted on the Prime Minister to make changes. More than 39,000 care home residents died of the virus. From April 2020 to March 2021, in English care homes, said the care regulator. It's about, what they're not saying is it was about 1 in 4. It's one of those sort of like crazy, I can't believe like people don't talk about it. It's like, yeah, in 2020 during the sort of the pandemic, it's like 1 in 4 people in care homes died. Almost all of them for COVID. What? That's like the kind of numbers you hear from like some kind of like in a third world like dictatorship or something. Like, oh yeah, a quarter of the inmates died in 1 year. Like, Jesus Christ. But as I give you that wonderful end note of Jesus Christ, I'm curious, what do you think, though? Do you think that maybe this is a good idea, actually? Maybe you think, the old people, they had their, maybe you think they had their chance, and that maybe they should be have to pay a bit more, and have to go through this like income tax bracket. Maybe you think that I'm actually correct on, even though I didn't really have like one completely solid stance. I'm generally kind of like, I'm not really a fan of this. But in the meantime, there are other people. I know, right? Shocking. Nobody would ever see it coming. But there are other people who exist. They have something to say. Just have a listen to what they have to say, and I'll catch you all again very, very soon. Jorge Shaft, and I'm talking about all the great things that happened this week. Gotta say, the other people are looking really smooth this week, actually. Very great animations. Reminds me of the infographic show, which is a good thing. Anyway, I was talking about social care. The fact there's been a big reform at the moment in the UK coming through with a backlash. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, social care needed a change, but like, was this the right way of doing it? It basically made that anyone in London wouldn't be able to have it. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. I had some pretty regular comments in the last section, and I really like it. When having these conversations, they're good stuff. But now let's go straight to our next story. This story will take us across the pond, skipping over to the United States and to the land where NPR is a thing. I like NPR. It's a radio station that kept me sane more than once during long road trips in the US. They're generally good heads on their shoulders. And so when they had this article there, I thought this would be good. Title: What the ruling in the Epic Games versus Apple lawsuit means for iPhone users. Okay? A federal judge on Friday issued a long-awaited ruling in Fortnite maker Epic Games' legal battle with Apple over its App Store policies. Both sides are using the 185-page ruling to double down on their own positions, which is possible because details are complicated. If anything, though, Apple and Google did land small wins, but neither got what they wanted. I know I'm just reading the article at the moment, but it really is quite well written, so it just explains what's going on. US District Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers said that Apple was breaking the law by forcing people to pay for apps and in-app items through the App Store, where it usually takes a 30% slice of the payment as commission. Gonzalez Rogers told Apple to ease up and to let in other payment options within 90 days. That will please Apple, but is far from what Epic had sought. For Apple, Gonzalez Rogers upheld the App Store's overall structure as legal, a major victory for the tech giant. She said that Apple does not have an illegal monopoly over how developers can process payments for mobile games, which Apple applauded. So it's a split decision, said Stanford law professor Mark Lemley. It will improve competition on the edges, but it's not the fundamental change that Epic and advocates of the antitrust case would have hoped for. I mean, it sounds pretty clear there what was happening there. And it's not super different from what it was on the tin in that general thing. Basically, if you have an app and you put it on iPhone things, it needs to be on the Apple Store. But on the Apple Store, if you have like any kind of payment, you buy anything on there, you need to pay for Apple. And the judge looked at that and went like, yeah, actually, no, that like in premise is okay. Which I'm not super thrilled with. And it was honestly pretty weird, right? On a question. Because like everything I've heard about Fortnite has been like grossly unethical. But hey, they're on the right side when they're saying, hey, look, if we want to put like our game on Apple devices, like we always have to put it through the App Store. And then on the App Store, like they make us pay like loads of money, a big cut of not just buying the app, but also buying any extra thing on it. So, for example, for Fortnite, I imagine what it was. In fact, I don't imagine. I've read this. The big problem was like, okay, like you buy Fortnite from the Apple Store. Okay, fine, at a higher price because a bunch of that money is going to Apple instead of to Epic Games who make Fortnite. But then once you have Fortnite, you're like, okay, oh, I like that, that extra DLC hat for my character. So I'm going to buy that as well. And then 30% of that money was also going to Apple, which, I'm going to be real, tiny bit scummy. I'm not a huge fan. I don't like it. So it is a bit disappointing. So I'm a bit disappointed that the judge didn't like really go after it. And Apple takes the doctor away, but not your wallet. Yeah. Now there are two types of apples. One apple is really, really good for when you have a doctor, when you have a doctor problem. The other apple, really, really good if you have a wallet problem. The wallet's too full, you've got all this money, and it's like, oh no, what do I do with all this money? The money, there's too much money. I'll never be able to spend it all. But I don't like it though. In all seriousness, the app model, because it's like, okay, I get like you buy an app through the App Store, and you pay part to the App Store. Like, all right, that's fine. Like, Apple is hosting. To keep to the example, like Apple is hosting Fortnite on it. Like you can, and it's like you're buying it there. To go analog on you, like it's like a shop. Okay, you go to the shop, you buy, whatever it is you want there, apples, potatoes, in the shop, and some of that money goes to the shop itself. Like, okay, that's fine. But then the app part, like microtransactions as well. It's like, what? Like, why is Apple like involved with that? I know that, for example, with Fortnite, and this is why they were so angry with it, like they are perfectly capable of handling it themselves. within the app. And we know that they can do that because that's what they do with a bunch of the other sort of platforms. If you have Fortnite, for example, on like the Xbox, it's a Microsoft thing. Like Epic Games can handle those microtransactions themselves in the Fortnite, game when you're buying those extra DLCs and extra stuff. But they can't do that on an Apple device? Really? Why? Oh, because Apple says so. And Apple says that if you don't do that, then you're going to be, punished for it. Why? No. So I'm not super happy with the the sort of split decision, but I'm actually quite happy that at least like a part of it was gone after. One of the sort of nice things about this is that it will probably make things cheaper. One of the things that actually really frustrated Apple in this court case was that Fortnite actually had like a special, buy the extra skins, the extra DLCs on the Fortnite platform, in the game. Oh, and if you do so, there's a minus 30% off, to the price, because none of it's going through Apple. So we don't need to pay Apple, so we don't need to charge you that extra money. And like that was one of the reasons Apple got so angry. It was like, hey, no, we want that money, and we host your game, and everybody's like buying the game through us. So yeah, we're also like really predatory. Will there be any sort of visible changes going back to NPR? Maybe. You might see a new button in some of your favorite apps that lets you buy things through the developer's own payment system, for example. Or there could be a link inside the app directing customers to complete a payment on a browser. Whatever it looks like, Apple's solely controlling what critics call the toll booth in the App Store will be no longer. There's an appeals process, though, so don't expect it to go super fast. In fact, today, actually, the story was all about, Apple and Epic Games are going to be appealing because, of course, they are. None of them are really happy with the case. The judge was kind of like, like I guess Apple can have like this bit where it's like, the whole model is legal. And like they can do that, but they should let Fortnite do their own thing as well, so it's not like a monopoly. So yeah, of course, none of them are going to be happy with that. Both are going to appeal. So maybe the right thing can happen. Maybe the next judge will look at this and go like, well, no. Obviously, Fortnite's in the right here. It's really absurd for Apple to be doing this whole gatekeeping toll road thing when it really shouldn't be able to. But then again, it's the United States. Supreme Court will probably side with Apple. But what do you think? I've been talking myself raw all about what I feel about really some apps in a video game. But I'm really excited to hear what you've got to say. Meanwhile, if you want to hear what others have got to say, good news! They also have got things to say. So I'll catch you all again very, very soon. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Happening. My name is Jorge Shaft, and I've been talking all about all the exciting things that's been happening this week so far. I talked about the social care and the whole scandal around there. I talked about Apple and the Epic Games store, with their whole battle of ages, battle of the century, not really, just a lawsuit about whether Apple is being monopolistic, which they obviously are. But first, I've got to mention one little thing, which is Kyle, who's the editor at the moment of the show, is beaming with pride over the fact that I complimented his advert, it turned out, which always happy to help there with you, Kyle. Hope you're having a nice time. Meanwhile, let's go straight to the next thing. But it's going to be a bit different because it's not actually about, oh, hey, by the way, here's this thing that happened this week. Because not really. And now, just over 20 years ago. It's one that people will know immediately when you say what its title is, its name. It's 9/11. Yes, I know, right? For anybody who's older than 30, it's going to be an immediate wait. That was 20 years ago? Yeah, actually. 9/11 was 20 years ago now. The 11th of September 2021, which is, if you look on the calendar, exactly 20 years after the 11th of September 2001. I don't think 9/11 really needs an introduction, but I'll give it's one you one anyway, because I feel like it and nobody can stop me, except Kyle, I guess. Basically, 2001, New York had this big stock exchange called the World Trade Center, hosting twin towers called the Twin Towers, which were actually pretty shoddy construction, and everybody knew it. In fact, in the 1994, there was actually an attempted terrorist attack at the building with the South Tower, for the express purpose of making it collapse. But it was a target again, and in 2001, 11th of September, Islamist group called Al Qaeda hijacked some planes, crashed them into the towers. Thousands of people died. The towers collapsed. They also crashed a plane into the Pentagon, which is the sort of military defense headquarters in the US. Again, thousands of people died. And they also tried to crash a plane into the White House, just tried to kill the president. But that plane got intercepted and shot down. But still, everyone who was on board that plane, which was hundreds of people, all died as well. An absolutely horrific attack. I don't think it needs to be elaborated on. 3,000 people died. The death toll, in fact, has been climbing even higher because in the burning wreckage and in the madness, hundreds and hundreds of emergency personnel rushing in, often without their protection, because oh my god, there's people burning and dying, and rescue them quick. And then there's been a huge battle about a bunch of them dying from cancer from all the materials. I know that one of the towers, the Twin Towers, had a storage or some kind of a laboratory in it that was spewing all kinds of toxic, horrible stuff into people's lungs. So the death toll, if you look at the long toll, there's actually been more than that. But yeah, just horrific. There's no other word for it. We all also know the aftermath. George Bush, who was the president at the time, was at a school reading children's stories because it's a nice thing, for the president to do, visit the country, travel around the country. When he was told, like, hey, by the way, some major terrible things have happened. You need to go now and deal with this. He responded by, first antagonizing and then invading Afghanistan, because Afghanistan was hosting the organizer, the mastermind of the plan, a Saudi Arabian national called Osama bin Laden, invades Afghanistan, huge Afghan war, and that Afghan war actually only just ended. If you want to know more about what I thought about the end of the Afghan war, you can do so, because I actually had 3 episodes where I ended up talking about Afghanistan here on Relaks Radio at The Happening. So make sure to check that out if you want to see my take on that. 2 years later, with the country still in a frenzy, bloodlust, for revenge, the United States decided to, and dragged Britain with it too, to invade Iraq. Both of these wars, so hundreds of thousands of people die, massive destruction on a titanic scale, completely just destroyed political stability in the Middle East completely. And the wars from that are still going on. There's just barely a ceasefire nowadays in Iraq and in Syria between various rebel groups and the governments. Afghanistan was like their sort of American-backed national government collapsed within 10 seconds when America left, and now it's under what I like to euphemistically call new management by the Taliban, who also this week just captured or sort of like negotiated away, they were claiming anyway, the last kind of like stronghold of resistance, which was this valley called the Panjshir Valley. And they also they commemorated 9/11 themselves. Provocatively, though, the Taliban commemorated 9/11 by flying the Taliban flag over the old presidential palace. And then, of course, the big elephant in the room from 9/11 is the fact that it started a massive culture of fear about terrorism. Now, the whole object of terrorism is to scare people, and it worked. Both the United States within a year passed a thing called the Patriot Act, which was this really authoritarian measure of like, oh yeah, let's spy on people and imprison them for ages and ages and ages without any accusation whatsoever or any reason, because we just think they might be terrorists. Legalized torture, which the US and shamefully the UK as well does. Just like, yeah, we think you're a terrorist, and we think you might do another 9/11, so we're just going to torture you. And in so many words, I could keep going on, but really what I just want to say is 9/11 is one of those incidents that just on every level made the world worse. Like, just on like an objective level, 9/11 made the world a worse place. The US went from, we won the Cold War. Isn't it great that we won? Paranoid, going to war with everyone, wasting billions of dollars and thousands of lives in the process. Western countries became like, not just Western countries, countries with any Muslims in it whatsoever became really much more authoritarian and much more kind of like, oh, there might be another Al-Qaeda person somewhere who might do a horrible thing. Islamists, meanwhile, had a great time. Like, they suddenly had like this inspired sort of like rallying cry for themselves. They managed to get like loads of people at one point to go like, yeah, no, this whole Al-Qaeda stuff, they're like actually fighting. It's like, yeah, but they're massacring thousands of people. It's like, yeah, but which is not which is what they say in the business, absolutely awful. And then finally, there was ultimately also the fact that 9/11's been, it's almost been like a precursor. It's almost been like a herald of how we would deal with kind of like information. The Bush administration lied through its teeth about Iraq. Then with 9/11 itself, people kind of had the thought of like, well, if the Bush administration would lie about Iraq, then maybe they'd lie about 9/11 too. To the point where basically the 9/11 sort of truther conspiracies are seen as like the gateway. They're seen as like, oh yeah, the level 1 conspiracy theory for you to dive into. And then the higher level stuff is all the kind of any other conspiracy theory you can think of. Conspiracy theories that are holding very strong, even as daily we get videos from all the people still dying of COVID because they didn't get vaccinated. When we still see people fighting on the streets because, there's like lizard people, sort of in the US, for example, like they go, oh, a satanic kind of cabal cult of pedophiles are like running the US government. Versus, oh yeah, no, it's sort of a white supremacist kind of like cabal of, like colonizers and have imperialist mustachio villains are running the show. And they just fight each other. It's, as I said, there's no one story here that kind of expressed it this week. But I did think that 9/11 had to be mentioned. So far in the 20th century, it's been one of the 21st century, sorry. It's been one of the biggest events, and it's been one of the most wide-ranging, most total consequences events there's been. And almost all of it, in fact, all of it, has been for the worst. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I will get a little like notification, so I get to read them. And I like reading the notes.
Relaks Radio presents T10 Lost.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh, so that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Ladies who ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" I mean, hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, got me thinking. You want to stand out. Why do you want to stand out though so much, especially with these kind of shirts when you're riding? There must be a purpose behind it, right?
Well, when you say a purpose, Nick, what I do, I wear the shirts mainly because they're nice and bright, so they make me visible, especially if I'm riding on the road.
Okay. I mean, yeah, that's very important, right? Because you want cars, yeah.
Very important. And also, like, people see me in like calves, and perhaps I shouldn't be saying this on here, I suppose, but in the bar afterwards.
All right.
And it gives them something to look at, and it makes them laugh. It makes them laugh, so that's why I do it.
Oh, and it could be a really good pickup line as well. Ladies who ask, "Hey, excuse me, so why are you wearing something so colorful?" I mean, hey, you can always have something up on your sleeve. I mean, you look like a guy who would do.
You know me too well. You know me too well, Nick.
Greetings and welcome to The Happening. My name is Jorge Shaft, and I've been talking for almost an hour now about the various things that have been happening this past week. I talked about social care and the fact that it's been like the big politics story in the UK because, shock horror, the government actually did try to like do something when it came to pensioners. We are born to survive, not to live. Sad truth. Yeah, it's really sad. Like, because, we would like to live, but so much of our like state apparatuses are all about just survival, which is what 9/11 did. Coincidentally, also one of the sections I talked about, the 20th anniversary of 9/11, easily one of the worst acts of the 20th century, one of the most wide-ranging, sort of most dramatic effect act in the whole century so far. And then last of all, I talked about, of course, the lawsuit between Epic Games and Apple, where Apple was trying to be monopolistic and Epic Games didn't like that. Still in the appeals, so we'll see where that actually goes. But finally, the news is a weird thing. I just talked about 9/11, this horrific attack, thousands and thousands of people killed, leading to wars that killed way, 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 way more, led to torture, war, suspicion, illegality. The list of terrible things is just infinite. But now I'm going to go for the happy thing. Yay! I feel like one of those like local news TV stations, which goes like, oh yeah, so first item, oh man, a man's just been stabbed and murdered. Like, oh, this is so bad. Anyway, here's now a story about a goose. Look at how happy this goose is. Maybe, oh look how the goose being really happy at like the dead body of the previous story. Whatever. I feel like that, but I think this was just a story that was just too perfect, and it kind of hit my special blend in a way. The Ig Nobel Prize is a very, very well-known prize for science, but it is not the one that you might be thinking, because you might have misheard me and heard me hear the Nobel Prize, which is incredibly well known. It's got the whole story of the Alfred Nobel was like the guy who made dynamite, and he read like an obituary of himself, and it was all about how he was like a merchant of death, and he was like, oh my god, no, I'm gonna make like a prize now so like people remember me for something else. But no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the Ig Nobel Prize, because of course Ig Nobel though is like the opposite. But there's also a lot of like research and a lot of like scientific advances that, though, like they don't seem glamorous. They're not like super like wow, amazing, but they're still valid science. And so it's a good thing that they get recognized and rewarded too. And this week was the Ig Nobel Prize for one of my favorite Ig Nobels that there's ever been. I've gotten CNN up for this because honestly, it was just perfect. Upside down rhino experiment wins Ig Nobel Prize. All right, with that, you have to read it. A team of researchers behind an experiment that involved hanging rhinoceroses upside down, suspended in the air by their feet, has been awarded an Ig Nobel Prize. The spoof accolade borrows its name from, but is not connected with, the now famous Nobel Prize. It was created by the science magazine Annals of Improbable Research, and it's been an annual thing since 1991. It honors the curious and imaginative discoveries. Like the original, it has its own following. Okay? So what is it? The winning team of researchers are from Namibia, South Africa, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Brazil, the UK, and the US. And they were attempting to see whether rhinos could be more safely transported when airlifted if they were upside down. As part of the experiment, led by Robin Radcliffe, a senior lecturer in wildlife and conservation medicine at Cornell University, The team sedated 12 black rhinos in Namibia using aerial darts, then bound their legs and suspended them. They then measured their biomarkers for respiration and ventilation. The rhino, and long story short, they found that the rhinos had a higher blood oxygen level when they were suspended upside down. And they were like, well, we thought they were going to do worse when upside down. But no, actually, the rhinos are having a better time. And they're breathing easier. And they get, they're kind of like more comfortable when they're upside down, suspended from a helicopter, than when they're like suspended the right way up in a helicopter. I love it. It's brilliant news. Like it has everything. Like it makes the world better because now we know, hey, yeah, we can move rhinos in this way, and it will be, and less of them are going to be like feeling uncomfortable, and it's going to be they're more likely to be alive and survive, and there's going to be all kinds of like great kind of like help. That's the word I'm looking for. Great help in like the conservation efforts. We also see it's also just really kind of out the box thinking. Yeah, head rush or horde rush. Yeah, that's the thing actually. Like part of the research was like the rhinos actually don't get a head rush when they're upside down. They're kind of just like, yeah, no, they're fine. And they get like really stressed out when they're like kind of hanging because they think like their feet need to be like on the ground and stuff. It's great. Like they're genuinely like on basically every level. Taking them upside down is actually the way to do it. Also, like it's almost like a happy accident because they were kind of like, yeah, well, probably would be pretty bad, but we're curious, so let's see, let's do the experiment, find out. And then there's also just the fact that come on, they won the Ig Nobel Prize, which is it's a spoof award. People kind of like go like, oh well, it's not serious, but actually it is. And like there are scientists who explicitly go like, yeah, I'd like the Ig Nobel because it's just great, really. It's more entertaining, I suppose. As long as humans don't get them extinct, transport them any way they like to safety. Yeah, completely agree. As I said, it helps out. Like it genuinely helps with the conservation efforts. Like you want them comfortable, you want them safe, and this is the way to do it. See, says the research. Science often looks quite silly when you look at it from the outside. I remember, for example, in a John Oliver sketch at one point, they showed like a sort of footage of, oh look, here's a shrimp running on a treadmill. Haha, look how silly that is. But really all of it's important. All of it's like it helps basically to breach the boundaries of what we know. And it's often easy to laugh. A shrimp that's running on a treadmill. Haha, look how funny that is. Oh, look at that rhino. It's upside down as it's being flown around by a helicopter. Doesn't that look really funny? And it does. But all of it has like a purpose to it. There's the fact that it's, we get to know more about the world. And when we know more about the world, we can do things with it. But I also want to stress again, like, the fact we can do things with it. This seems, it's funny. Like, yeah, we can put the rhino upside down. But now that we know that they handle it pretty well, this will have like a tangible, maybe small, but a tangible effect on like helping our efforts to conserve rhinos and save their species. We also like the same thing can be said big time about the big event of the past year. Coronavirus has gone out, it's killed millions of people around the world. Then scientists got their act and were like, oh my God, there's like a virus. They researched it and they found like ways to treat it. They found, there was like the whole thing for steroid. It's like, yeah, people take this steroids. Forget this name exactly, but like it's like a really common one. It's like, yeah, people take the steroid while they're sick. They're less likely to die. They found that, like, oh, you could put like a ventilator to like make people still be able to breathe even as the virus is like destroying their lungs. And they're more likely to survive and live through it. And then they put in the research and found a way to vaccinate people. Like, hey, look, you take the virus, the different ones work in different ways. But I know, for example, Pfizer is like, yeah, if you take like the kind of like the DNA strands of the virus, when it's like all kind of like broken up into a bit of almost like a smoothie of virus, the body then learns like, oh yeah, this means there might be a virus here. Let's quick make antibodies, and then save people's lives. There's nothing there that you can fault and say like, no, that's bad, that's wrong, it's evil. But it just requires that extra leap. It requires that bit of like imagination, that bit of kind of, I don't want to use the word trust, but I want to use the word kind of like understanding. The idea of, okay, if we try out something and then it works and then we can do things about it, we can make the world a better place. I've been thinking actually quite a lot about various things around this. The vaccines in specific have been sort of a big one here. I've just been having the thought of just the fact that ultimately the biggest test of whether something is true or not is the test of whether it can be done with something. You could just say, oh, a rhino which is upside down is actually more comfortable than one that's not, when being airlifted. But, if it was wrong, then you'd find when you put rhinos upside down by airlift that, oh, they're actually being like suffering, or they're even maybe more likely to die. But we don't. We found the opposite. We found that actually they're more likely to be comfortable and actually have like their heads, and have like the blood circulation going through. And now we're better equipped to handle the conservation of rhinos. I often feel that maybe we should apply that test of truth to more things. Just be able to, really seriously think about like, what can we do with the knowledge that I'm being told? What can I do with, what people want me to believe? And if what I can do with it is useful, is beneficial, is more efficient, then there's a good chance that what I'm being told could actually just be true. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. People should not be quick to judge. And they also should not be quick to, kind of make their minds up immediately. Yes. And that goes always, both for people who pride themselves on their skepticism and those who don't. But you won't be able to judge me, at least for another week, because I'm at the end of my time. But don't worry, there are other people. Not the other peoples in the ads, but other people who do Relaks radio shows. We're streaming basically all the time at all sorts of different places. All of it good. Highly recommend it. And I'll catch you all again very, very soon. Next week. Have a good day.
Cycling in London is not child's play. How to be a better cyclist. Listen to my show, only on Relaks Radio. I'm Kevin. Join me every Thursday, 5 p.m.
Look forward to seeing you.